The night was quiet on the lonely outpost. The stars burned like cold fire above the silent planet. Inside the metal shelter, a man sat alone, his face half in shadow, his eyes staring at the small fire he had built from scraps. He lived alone for years, and no one ever came this far. The silence was his only companion, and he had grown used to it. But that night, something broke the silence, a sound he had not heard in a long time. A knock, soft at first, then louder, echoing through the hollow metal door. The man froze, his hand tightening on the old rifle leaning beside him. He thought it was his mind playing tricks, or maybe the storm winds knocking loose debris, but then he heard it again, steady, desperate, human. He moved slowly to the door, his boots heavy on the floor. The knocking grew urgent, followed by a voice trembling, weak. "Please, open. I beg you," the voice said. The man hesitated, his finger brushing the trigger of his rifle. Few travelers survived out here, and strangers often meant trouble. But there was something in that voice, something that pulled at the human part of him he had tried to bury. He pressed the scanner to check outside. The small screen flickered with static before showing a figure, a woman, thin and pale, clutching something close to her chest. Behind her, two small shadows huddled against her legs. "Children," the man frowned, his chest tightening. What was a family doing out here, in the middle of the void? No one should be alive in this wasteland. The woman knocked again, her voice breaking now. "Please, just one night, feed my children. I will leave tomorrow, I swear, just one night." Her words pierced the cold walls of his heart. The man's hand shook slightly as he reached for the lock. Every warning in his mind screamed at him. This could be a trap, a trick, a danger he could not see yet, but still he felt something purr, a pull he could not resist. It was the sound of the children coughing, whispering for food. Slowly he unlocked the heavy door. The metal groaned as it opened, revealing the woman and her children. They looked half dead, faces hollow, eyes wide with hunger and fear. The woman's clothes were torn, dust covering her skin. The children clung to her, one girl and one boy, no older than 8 or 9. Their cheeks were thin, their lips dry. The man stared at them, his rifle still in his hand, unsure what to do. The woman stepped forward, her knees trembling. "Please, sir, just one night, give them food and we will leave, I swear," she said. Her eyes glistened with tears, her voice full of desperation. The man's heart pounded. He thought of his years in war, of the families who had begged for safety, of the screams he had tried to forget. He lowered the rifle slowly, stepping aside. "Come in," he said quietly, his voice rough from silence. The woman almost collapsed with relief as she guided the children inside. The warmth of the small fire made the children's eyes brighten. They reached toward it, their hands shaking from cold. The man opened a metal crate and pulled out food packs. He gave them to the woman, who quickly tore them open and passed them to her children. The kids ate fast, like they had not tasted food in days. The man watched in silence, his chest heavy. Something about their hunger reminded him of old scars he carried deep inside. As the children ate, the woman sat quietly, her hands shaking. The man studied her face and asked, "Who are you running from?" Her eyes flickered with fear and she whispered, "They will come. They always come. They never stop." The man frowned, leaning closer. "Who?" he asked again, but she only shook her head, her lips trembling, refusing to speak more. Outside, the wind howled across the empty planet, but beneath that howl, the man thought he heard something else, a distant thrum, almost like engines, almost like footsteps too heavy for humans. He stood, moving to the scanner again, but the screen showed only darkness. Still, his gut twisted with unease. Something was out there. Something was coming. The woman held her children close, her eyes darting to the door. She knew it too. Her fear was real, and now it became his. The fire crackled, the children whispered. The man gripped his rifle, his jaw tight. He thought he had left danger behind long ago, but now danger had come knocking at his door, and by letting them in, he knew his quiet life was over. Outside, far in the night, something moved. The ground shivered faintly under his boots. The hunt had already begun. The outpost was quiet again, but the silence was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, full of tension, like the calm before a storm. The man sat near the fire, his rifle close, watching the woman and her children. They ate slowly now, their hunger easing, their small hands trembling less with every bite. The woman's eyes, though tired, kept darting to the door, as if expecting it to burst open at any moment. The man leaned forward, his voice rough but steady. "You said they are coming. Who is chasing you?" he asked. The woman did not answer at first. She held her son closer, pressing his head against her shoulder. Her daughter curled near the fire, eyes half shut but still awake, listening. Finally, the woman whispered, "They are not men. They are hunters. They do not forgive. They do not stop. They take everything." The man frowned, his chest tightening. He had heard stories of raiders, pirates, and mercenaries, but her voice carried a different weight. This was not fear of thieves, this was fear of something worse. He asked again, quieter now, "What do? Oh, they want with you. Why chase a mother and her children?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "They want all of us, anyone who resists, anyone who dares to hide. They burn homes, they chain survivors, they feed on weakness." The man sat back, his mind racing. His years in war had taught him many truths. One of them was simple. Evil always hunted the weak, because the weak could not fight back. But he also knew something else. The weak did not always stay weak, not if someone stood beside them. The fire crackled, throwing long shadows across the metal walls. The man turned his head, listening. There it was again, faint but real, the low thrum in the distance, like engines pulsing through the night. It was not the storm, it was not the wind. Something mechanical, moving, searching, his hand clenched tighter on the rifle. The children seemed unaware, too tired, too full, their small bodies giving in to sleep. The girl rested her head on her brother's shoulder, whispering something before her eyes closed. The woman kissed them both softly, her lips trembling against their hair. The man saw her, saw the pain in her face, and understood. She had carried them across fire and death, and now she feared even this place would not protect them. The man spoke again. "If they find this place, you will not be safe. No wall here will hold forever." The woman nodded, her eyes fixed on the floor. "I know," she said, her voice hollow. "But where else can I go? Every road burns behind us, every shelter falls, there is nowhere left." Her words cut through him, deeper than he expected. He remembered when soldiers had said the same to him, when his world had collapsed under fire. He had survived, but survival had taken everything from him. He stood suddenly, moving to the scanner again. The screen flickered, static dancing, then shapes appeared, blurry but real. Heat signatures, distant, moving slowly but in formation. Not animals, not chance wanderers, hunters. The man cursed under his breath, his stomach tightening. "They are closer than I thought," he muttered. The woman's face went pale. "They found us," she whispered. Her hands clutched her children tighter, as if she could hide them with her embrace. The man turned sharply, his voice firm. "Stay quiet, stay near the fire. If they come, you do not open the door, no matter what you hear." Her eyes widened. "You will fight them?" she asked, disbelief and hope clashing in her voice. The man did not answer at first. He checked his rifle, loading the last of his energy cells. Finally he said, "If I do not fight, they will take you. If I fight, maybe you live." The woman stared at him, her lips trembling. "Why would you risk yourself for us? You do not even know us." The man paused, his eyes dark as old memories filled him. "I know enough," he said. "I know what happens when no one stands in the way." The firelight flickered across his face, showing scars, showing the weight of battles long past. He had wanted to live in silence, to leave the galaxy's pain behind. But silence had ended with a knock on his door. Now the past had found him again. And this time, it came with hungry eyes and small voices begging for life. The outpost lights dimmed suddenly, power fluctuating. The man froze. The woman gasped. The children stirred in their sleep, whispering softly. The scanner flickered again, then cut to black. Outside, the low hum grew louder, closer, steady like a heartbeat. The man gripped his rifle tighter. Standing at the door, his shadow tall and still, the hunt was here, and the night would not remain quiet for long. The night pressed heavy on the outpost. The air itself seemed to wait, holding its breath. The man stood at the door, rifle in hand, his eyes hard as stone. The woman sat with her children near the fire, her hands shaking as she whispered prayers that no one could hear. The hum outside grew louder, not the random sound of storms, not the distant echo of machines, but the steady rhythm of engines built for the hunt. Then the first light appeared on the horizon, not sunlight, not fire, but the sharp glow of search beams cutting through the darkness. They swept across the rocks, across the dust, and slowly turned toward the outpost. The man narrowed his eyes, muttering under his breath. "They found us." The scanner flickered back to life, static clearing for only seconds. Figures appeared on the screen, tall and armored, moving with perfect formation. Not raiders, not starving survivors, soldiers, but not human. Their bodies were wrapped in heavy suits, their faces hidden behind glowing masks, their weapons glowing with cruel energy. They moved like shadows that had learned discipline, hunters without mercy. The woman gasped when she saw them. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Not them. Please, not here." The man looked at her sharply. "You know who they are," he said, his tone flat. The woman nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "They are called Krail. They came to our colony months ago. They broke our walls. They chained our men. They took the strong. They slaughtered the weak. They do not stop, they only hunt. Her words cracked like glass. They burn hope itself. The man felt his chest tighten. He had heard rumors of the Krail, whispers carried by broken soldiers across old battlefields, a force that moved from world to world, harvesting the living, leaving silence behind. But he had never seen them with his own eyes, until now. The children stirred, their faces pale as the beams of light passed closer to the outpost. The girl clutched her brother's hand, whispering softly, "Mother, don't let them take us." The woman kissed their heads, her tears falling into their hair. The man looked at them, then back to the scanner. He knew what the Krail would do if they broke through, and he knew he would not let that happen, not while he still breathed. The outpost lights flickered again, then dimmed to almost nothing. The hum of the Krail engines vibrated through the walls. The man gripped his rifle tighter, his voice low and steady. "Stay here. Do not make a sound," he said. The woman reached out, her voice trembling. "You cannot fight them. No one can." The man's eyes burned like cold fire. "I've fought worse, and I'm still here." The beams of light hit the door now, bright enough to blind. A heavy clang echoed as something struck the metal, testing its strength. The children whimpered. The woman held them close. The man took a deep breath, his mind calm in the way only an old soldier could be calm. Every memory of battle returned to him, the chaos, the screams, the silence after victory. He had not asked for this fight, but it had come to his door, and he would answer. The scanners picked up more signals, dozens, maybe more. The Krail were surrounding the outpost, slow and steady, like wolves closing in on prey. The man's jaw tightened. This was not a raid, this was a hunt. They wanted the woman, the children, and anyone who dared protect them. He moved quickly through the outpost, checking defenses he had left unused for years. Old turrets hummed weakly, shields flickered with failing power. This place was not a fortress anymore. It was a broken shell, but a shell could still cut if wielded by the right hands. The woman watched him, her voice shaking. "You are going to fight them alone." The man glanced at her. "I'm not alone," he said. "I have this outpost, I have my rifle, and I have something worth protecting." The woman stared at him, shocked. She had begged for one night, no more. But this man was offering more than shelter. He was offering his life. The first blast hit the door, shaking the entire outpost. The children screamed, the woman held them tight. The man braced himself, rifle ready, heart steady. He whispered to himself, words no one else could hear. "Not tonight. Not while I stand." The second blast came, hotter, stronger, the metal groaning under the pressure. Sparks rained from the hinges, alarms screamed through the halls. The Krail were breaking through, and time was almost gone. The man stood tall, his figure outlined by the firelight. He looked like a shadow from war, scarred and unyielding. The children's eyes widened, watching him. For the first time, they saw not just a lonely stranger, but a protector. The woman whispered a single word, "Please." The door shook one last time, then the metal split, light flooding into the room. Through the smoke and sparks, the shapes of the Krail appeared, tall, armored, merciless. Their glowing masks turned toward the humans, their weapons raised, humming with deadly power. The man lifted his rifle, his voice steady. "If you want them," he growled, "you'll have to take them over my dead body." The Krail stepped forward, and the battle for the outpost began. The door had broken. Smoke and sparks filled the air. The Krail soldiers marched inside, their tall frames casting long shadows across the fire-lit room. Their glowing masks hissed with strange light, their weapons humming as if eager to taste blood. The children whimpered and pressed themselves against their mother, the woman's arms wrapping around them like a fragile shield. But the man stood in front of them, rifle steady, eyes hard. The steel, the first Krail aimed its weapon, a cruel barrel glowing red. The man fired first, a blast of energy striking the creature's chest. The shot knocked it back, sparks flying as the armor cracked. The children gasped, their eyes wide. The man did not stop. He fired again, moving fast, his body remembering battles he thought he had left behind. Every shot was precise, every step firm. He was no longer the silent hermit of the wasteland. He was a soldier again. The Krail roared in mechanical tones, their formation shifting. 3 more pushed forward, firing beams that tore into the walls, metal burning. The man rolled aside, his boots skidding across the floor. He raised his rifle and shot one in the throat, the mask exploding in sparks. The creature fell with a heavy crash, its weapon clattering to the ground. The woman gasped, clutching her children tighter. For the first time, she saw that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The outpost shook as more Krail hammered at the outer walls. The man knew they were many, too many, but he also knew something else. Fear was a weapon, and courage was the answer. If he showed fear, the family would break. If he showed courage, they might stand. He turned his head for a moment, his voice sharp but calm. "Stay low, stay quiet. I'll keep them back." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "You can't fight them all," she whispered. The man's jaw tightened. "Maybe not, but I can slow them. Every second I hold, you live." The Krail advanced again, their boots pounding like thunder. The man switched positions, firing from behind cover. Energy blasts shook the air, walls glowing hot, smoke rising. He moved with purpose, never wasting a shot. His body ached with age, with old scars, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. The children watched him with awe, their fear mixing with something new. "Hope," the boy whispered to his sister. "He fights for us." The girl nodded, her small hands clinging to her mother. "He won't let them take us." The battle raged, the man's rifle glowing as it spat defiance, but the Krail were endless, more pouring through the broken door, their weapons ready, their masks glowing like demons. The man gritted his teeth, ducking as a beam scorched the wall above his head. He pulled a grenade from his belt, one of the few he had left from old wars. With a swift motion, he hurled it into the cluster of Krail. The explosion rocked the outpost, flames and debris tearing through the invaders. For a moment, silence returned, broken only by the crackle of fire. The woman looked at him, her voice trembling. "Why are you doing this? Why risk your life for us?" The man paused, breathing hard, his rifle smoking in his hands. He looked at her, his eyes shadowed with memories. "Because once, someone did the same for me," he said, "and I swore I'd never let the darkness take another family if I could stop it." The Krail outside roared, their voices mechanical, echoing across the rocks. More boots pounded, more shadows gathered. The man knew this was only the beginning. The real fight had not even started. He checked his ammo, his grenades, his knife. Not much left, but enough for one last stand. He turned to the woman again, his tone sharp. "There's a tunnel under the floor, old escape route. You'll take the children and go when I give the signal." Her eyes widened. "And you?" she asked. The man shook his head. "I'll hold them here. If they follow, they'll find me, not you." The woman's tears flowed. "You'll die," she whispered. The man's face was calm. "Maybe, but if you live, if they live, it's worth it." The children shook their heads. "No," the boy cried. "You come with us." The girl's voice broke. "Please, don't stay." The man crouched, placing a rough hand on their shoulders. His voice softened. "I was alone for a long time. I thought my life was finished. But tonight you reminded me what it means to fight. It means to be human. Now let me do this." The outpost shook again, a deep boom as something heavy struck the walls. The man stood, his rifle ready, his body straight and unbroken. The firelight behind him made him look like a giant, a shadow of defiance against the storm. He turned once more, his final words sharp as steel. "Go when I tell you, and don't look back." Outside, the Krail roared as they prepared their next assault. Inside, the man stood alone, his courage burning brighter than fear. He was one man against many, but he was human. And humans, when pushed to the edge, did not break. They stood, they fought, they endured. The ground trembled as the Krail began their charge. The man lifted his rifle, his heart steady. This was not just his fight now. This was humanity's answer to the darkness, and he would make sure the Krail never forgot it. The outpost shook as the Krail stormed forward. Metal groaned, walls cracked, alarms screamed in red flashes. The man stood at the center of the chaos, his rifle burning with every shot, his body moving like a shadow from old wars. He fired into the breach, each blast cutting down a figure in glowing armor, sparks exploding as enemy weapons clattered to the floor. The woman covered her children, pulling them behind the broken crates, her eyes wide with fear and awe. The Krail poured in, relentless, their formation tight, their glowing masks unbroken by emotion. They fired beams that tore through walls, slicing through metal like paper. The man ducked and rolled, firing from cover, his movements sharp, precise. He remembered every drill, every battlefield, every scar that had taught him survival. Now all that training lived again, awakened by the simple need to protect. A Krail swung its massive weapon, a blade glowing with blue fire. The man leapt aside, the blade cutting deep into the floor, sparks spraying. With a roar, the man shoved his rifle into the alley. Ian's chest and fired. The shot burned through armor, sending the creature crashing back into the others. The children gasped, their small voices whispering, "He fights like a soldier." More Krail pressed in, their heavy boots pounding like drums of war. The man ducked behind a column, switching to his last grenade. He pulled the pin and hurled it into the cluster. The explosion shook the chamber, flames tearing through the invaders, smoke choking the air. For a moment, the outpost echoed with silence, broken only by the sound of fire crackling. The woman whispered, "Is it over?" But the man shook his head, his eyes still sharp. "They're testing us. The real wave hasn't come yet." As if to answer his words, the ground trembled. A deep rumble rolled through the outpost, heavier than footsteps, heavier than ships. The scanner flickered back to life, showing a massive shape outside. A war beast, a machine carried by the Krail to break strongholds. Its weapons glowed with deadly power. Its engines growled like thunder. The man cursed under his breath, his rifle almost empty, his grenades gone. He turned to the woman, his voice harsh but steady. "Get to the tunnel now. Take the children." She shook her head, her tears falling. "We can't leave you," he growled. "If you stay, we all die. If you go, at least they have a chance." The boy stood, his small hands clenched. "No, we won't leave him." The girl clung to her mother, crying. The man's face softened for a moment, his voice low. "You gave me a reason to fight tonight. Don't take that away. Go." The woman pulled the children close, sobbing. She kissed their foreheads, whispering promises. Then she looked at the man, her voice breaking. "May the stars guard you." The man nodded, turning back to the door, his rifle raised. "Tell them one thing if you survive," he said quietly. "Tell them humanity never bowed." The Krail war beast roared, its cannons charging. The walls shook, dust falling from the ceiling. The man braced himself, taking cover behind the last defense panel. He fired at the advancing soldiers, cutting them down one by one. But more kept coming, endless, merciless. The firelight painted him in red and gold, a figure standing alone against a tide. The children were pushed toward the hidden tunnel, their small voices crying, "Please don't die," the boy sobbed. The man did not answer, his focus locked on the enemy. Every shot he fired was a defiance, every step he took was a declaration. He was one man, but he fought like 1,000. The Krail staggered, their lines breaking under his fury. Then the war beast fired. A blast of energy tore through the chamber, fire and smoke filling the air. The shockwave hurled debris across the room, tearing holes in the walls. The woman shielded her children, her body trembling as rubble fell. But through the smoke, they saw him still standing, his rifle glowing, his figure unbroken. The Krail advanced, but slower now, their movements cautious. For the first time, they hesitated. For the first time, they faced something they had not expected. Human will, the man's voice rang out, echoing across the chamber. "You think fear makes us weak," he shouted, "but fear makes us fight harder. And tonight, I'll show you what it means to be human." He charged forward, slamming into the Krail with fury. His rifle fired at point-blank range. His knife cut through armor. His fists struck with brutal force. The woman gasped, her children clinging to her as they watched. The man was no longer just a soldier, he was something more. He was a symbol, a spark of defiance burning against the dark. Outside, the war beast roared again, preparing another strike. Inside, the man fought with every breath, every scar, every drop of strength left in hate. The children stared, their fear fading into awe. The girl whispered softly, almost like a prayer, "He is not alone, we are with him." The chamber shook again, walls crumbling, flames rising. The man stood tall, his rifle raised, his body glowing in the firelight. The Krail closed in, their weapons ready. But he did not falter. He did not step back. He was human, and he would fight until the very last breath. The outpost was burning. Flames crawled across the walls. Smoke filled the air. Alarms wailed in broken screams. The children were hidden in the tunnel now. The woman crouched with them, her hands shaking as she held them close. But her eyes kept turning back toward the chamber, toward the man who stood alone against the storm. The Krail surrounded him, tall and merciless, their glowing masks cold as stone, their weapons humming with deadly light. Behind them, the war beast roared, its cannons glowing brighter, ready to bring the entire outpost crashing down. The man tightened his grip on his rifle, his body battered, his breath heavy, yet his stance unbroken. Every muscle ached, every scar burned, but his eyes still blazed with fire. He was tired, but he was not defeated. The Krail advanced, weapons raised, their boots pounding like a death march. The man moved first, his rifle spitting fire, beams tearing through armor, sparks exploding into the smoke. He ducked behind broken panels, rolled across the floor, firing again and again. Each shot was a declaration, each strike a promise. He would not fall quietly, he would not give them victory. The woman could hear the battle, the echoes of gunfire, the roars of the Krail. The man's defiance carried through the smoke. She closed her eyes, whispering prayers, her children clinging tighter to her. The boy asked, his small voice trembling, "Will he come back to us?" The woman's tears fell as she kissed his hair. "He fights so you can live," she whispered. Her words broke like glass, but her heart clung to hope. The Krail pressed harder, their numbers overwhelming, their weapons carving deep scars into the chamber. The man was pushed back, his rifle clicking empty. With a growl, he tossed it aside and pulled his knife. The blade gleamed in the firelight, simple steel against alien power. but in his hands, it was more than a weapon. It was human defiance made sharp. He lunged, slashing at the nearest Krail, cutting deep through armor. The alien roared, staggering back. Another swung its blade, but the man ducked low, driving his knife upward into the creature's chest. Blood sprayed across the floor, glowing faintly in the light. The man pulled the blade free, turning to face the next. They came at him in a wave, weapons flashing, blades cutting, energy beams scorching. The man moved like a storm, every strike born of desperation and will. He fought not for himself, but for the children hiding in the tunnel, for the woman who had knocked on his door. He fought for humanity itself, for the belief that even in the darkest night, one man could hold the line. The war beast fired again, the chamber exploding in fire, rubble crashing down. The blast hurled the man across the floor, his body slamming into the wall, pain ripping through him. Blood dripped from his mouth, his vision blurred, but still he pushed himself up. The Krail advanced, their masks glowing, weapons ready to finish him. The man spat blood, gripping his knife tighter, his voice low. Not yet. He stumbled forward, every step heavy, but his spirit unbroken. He slashed at one Krail, stabbed another, kicking the third into the flames. The woman gasped from the tunnel, her eyes wide as she watched. Her heart broke at the sight of him bleeding, staggering, yet still fighting. She whispered through her tears, "Why won't he fall?" And the answer echoed in her own mind, because he was human, and humans did not fall and hid. Oh, the last breath. The chamber shook again, the war beast preparing its final strike. The man looked up, his eyes narrowing. If the beast fired, the outpost would collapse, the tunnel would be buried, the children would die. He could not allow that. With a roar, he charged through the Krail, blades flashing, fists striking, his body a storm of rage and courage. They tried to stop him, but he broke through, leaping toward the war beast. The machine loomed above him, its cannons glowing like suns. The man climbed its side, stabbing his knife into its armor, pulling himself upward. The Krail shouted, firing at him, but he climbed faster, pain forgotten, only purpose burning in his mind. He reached the top, tearing open a hatch, his knife plunging deep into glowing wires. The beast roared, shaking violently, its power surging out of control. The man knew what would happen. He knew this was the end, but he smiled, blood on his lips, fire in his eyes. "If one life can save many, then this life is enough," he whispered. The woman screamed his name, though she had never known it until that moment. The children cried, reaching out with small hands, but the man slammed his knife deeper, tearing through the core. The war beast exploded, fire and light flooding the chamber, the shockwave ripping through the outpost. The tunnel shook, rubble falling. The woman shielded her children, holding them tight. The roar of the explosion filled the night, shaking the ground for miles. And then came silence, heavy, endless silence. The woman lifted her head, coughing through smoke. The children sobbed, calling for him. But the chamber was gone, fire and ruin where he had stood. The man was gone, but his last act had saved them. The war beast was destroyed, the Krail scattered, their hunt broken. The woman held her children close, tears streaming down her face. "He gave us one night, sus," he whispered, her voice trembling. "One night so we could see the dawn." The ruins of the outpost smoldered in silence. The night sky glowed with the fading fire of the war beast's explosion. Dust drifted through the broken chamber, metal twisted, walls shattered. The woman crawled from the tunnel with her children, coughing through smoke, eyes wide with shock. They searched the flames, their small voices crying his name. But the man was gone, swallowed by fire, his body lost in the wreckage. The boy sobbed into his mother's arms. "He said he would protect us," the girl whispered, her tears falling. "He did. We're alive because of him." The woman held them close, her heart breaking, her voice trembling. "He gave everything, so you could live. Never forget that." The wind carried silence across the wasteland, but not for long. From the distance, faint lights appeared in the sky. Ships, small and fast, flying in formation. The woman gasped, pointing upward. "Look, the beacon," she whispered. Unseen by her, the man's final fight had triggered an old distress signal from the outpost. His sacrifice had not only destroyed the war beast, it had called for help. The ships descended, landing near the ruins. Human soldiers poured out, their armor scratched, their weapons ready. They rushed to the woman and her children, pulling them into safety. One soldier knelt, his voice sharp but gentle. "Where is the one who sent the signal?" The woman shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "He stayed behind. He gave his life." The soldiers lowered their heads, silent respect filling the air. They looked at the burning wreck, at the shattered Krail bodies, and they understood. One man had stood against the hunt, and one man had won, not with strength alone, but with will. With sacrifice, with courage, the commander stepped forward, his eyes hard. If one man can do this, then humanity is not broken, he said. His stand will not be forgotten. Children clung to their mother as the soldiers guided them toward the ships, but the girl looked back, her eyes fixed on the flames. She whispered softly, as if speaking to the stars, "You are not gone, you are with us now." The soldiers carried word of the outpost across the colonies. Everywhere they went, they told the story. The lonely man who had lived in silence, who opened his door to a desperate knock. The man who stood against the Krail, who destroyed their war beast, who saved a mother and her children. Whispers became voices, voices became shouts, and soon his story spread like fire. The colonies were tired, beaten, afraid, but when they heard of him, something changed. Hope stirred where fear had ruled. The people stood taller, their voices louder. If one man could defy the Krail, then so could they. If one man could give everything, then they could give something. Across the stars, humans began to resist. They rebuilt defenses, they formed alliances, they took back ground step by step. The Krail, who had once seemed unstoppable, now faced an enemy that would not bow. And at the heart of it all was the story of the man who gave his life for one night. The woman and her children were carried to safety, but they never forgot. The boy grew, carrying his protector's spirit inside him. The girl grew, telling his story again and again. They became symbols themselves, living proof of his sacrifice. Their lives were the future he had bought with blood. Years later, when humanity stood strong against the Krail, when battle lines stretched across the stars, soldiers painted his symbol on their armor, a simple mark, a knife crossed over a flame. It reminded them that courage was stronger than fear, that even in the darkest night, one man's choice could change everything. The woman lived long enough to see humanity rise again, but she always remembered that first knock, the plea she made. Just one night, feed my children, she had said, and he had given her more than food, more than shelter. He had given her children a future. He had given humanity a reason to fight. On quiet nights, when the stars burned above, she whispered his memory like a prayer. He gave us one night, she said, her voice filled with both sorrow and pride. And with that night, humanity gained a future. The story of the man became legend, not just a tale of battle, but a reminder of what it meant to be human, to stand, to protect, to sacrifice, to choose courage, even when defeat seemed certain. And as long as his story was told, humanity would never be alone in the dark.